An alternative to charts and graphs was given with the introduction of Sparklines. A Sparkline is a mini graph that will display in a single cell based on the values in some other cells, and those cells could be elsewhere in Excel. If we take our sales data 2013, we could place a little mini graph here that effectively graphs our sales for the north, the south, the east and the west. So a little sparkline at the end of each of the lines. So if we go to G2, which is the end of the north data, and we want to add a sparkline, then we go to Insert, come along to the Sparklines group, and there's 3 types of sparkline, and we'll investigate all 3 types. We have 4 regions to play with, and we'd like a line sparkline. First thing we need to provide the sparkline with is the range to base its line on. So it needs to be based on these 3 cells here. So I use the little browse button, select the 3 cells, and then return. Where would you like the sparkline itself to be placed? Well, it's placing it in G2 because that's where I was when I selected the sparkline. So if I'm in the wrong cell, I can still use the browse button to say let's place it somewhere else on the sheet. So that's okay. And you see a little mini sparkline appears. Now if we do the same for the south, we go to Insert. This time we'll choose a column style one, and that's all it is the difference in the style of the sparkline. Based on the south data, turn to the sparkline dialog box. It's going to go into G3. Okay. And you see this time we get a column that represents each of the values within the south data. East and west, let's choose the 3rd type of sparkline. So let's insert win/loss. Based on the east data, return to the sparkline dialog box, and it's going to place that in G4. Okay. Now they are very similar to column bars, but effectively a win-loss leaves space within the cell for some negative numbers, so effectively loss values. So those are the 3 types of sparkline. We, however, have 4 lines of data. So for our west set of data, we could use one of the other sparkline layouts. I do quite like the bar one, the column one. So let's copy that cell and paste it here. It has pasted the correct sparkline type because I've got 2 columns, and the column sizes do appear to represent the values within west. Now I can check that it's done that correctly by clicking on this cell. You'll find you have a Sparkline Tools context sensitive ribbon, and over on the left here we can edit the data. So I want to edit the group location and data, and we see that it's picking up the data from C5 to E5, which is those 3 cells there. So I know it's selecting the correct data. Now, as well as being able to check that you've got the correct data choice, on the Sparklines design ribbon, we can actually design the sparklines to some degree. There's a different set of styles. You can see we've got choices of other colors then. So I've got different bar colors. I can change the theme colors. So I could go for a sort of orangey theme. I can choose to have the high point highlighted, and you can see it goes a darker color of the same theme, or the low point highlighted. Although it's very small compared to the others, we can hardly see. Any negative points? Well, there are none in that particular sparkline. First point or the last point. Now with only 3 sets of data, that's not a massive change either, but you could have hundreds in your sparkline data and you're trying to highlight the first and the last. We can even change the sparkline type, so it didn't actually matter which one you chose in the first place, because we can change to a line or a win-loss type or back to a column at any stage using the Sparkline ribbon. Just like your normal charts and graphs, the Sparkline will respond to a change in the data automatically. We're on the summary sheet, so we need to actually change one of the subsheets. So let's go for February South and put quite a large negative number in there, which will feed into our sales summary. Not large enough to bring that down to very little. Let's go even larger, minus 4,500. And that makes the sales summary now a negative number, which if we change that style using the Sparkline Tools design into a win-loss option, you can see the loss appears below the x-axis. And with a choice of styles, we can make that look better. At some point you may wish not to have any sparklines, and there are a couple of ways of removing them. One is simply to select the cell and press delete, which we know will take away any of the cell contents. The sparkline is not really content of that cell. because if you actually double click to enter the cell, you'll see you can still type in it. The sparkline is more really special formatting. So to remove the sparkline, we have to physically delete the cell, which we can do on the right click, delete. If we're taking that cell away, let's bring all the cells up. Okay, and that removes your sparkline. Alternatively, you can select the sparkline or multiple sparklines using Control click. Go to the Sparkline Tools Design ribbon, come across to Clear and choose Clear Selected Sparklines, and that will remove the sparklines. So that's sparklines, mini graphs really, that will display a small choice of graph choices, just a line, a win-loss or a column, but within a single cell. So quite useful for small graphical representations of data.